Arsenal are Premier League champions, and what an amazing feeling it is for all of us Arsenal fans. It's been 22 years coming, 22 years of hurt, pain, banter, and everything that has come with it. And we are now Premier League champions, and that really changes what the outlook for Sunday really looks like. And we're going to be watching Sunday, but we're watching Sunday for very, very different reasons. It's not for the results, not for the trophy, obviously. We're going to be lifting up the trophy as well. But you're going to watch Sunday at Selhurst Park because it will tell you something about the Paris Saint-Germain's game, the PSG game. And every minute, Gyökeres plays tells you something. Lewis-Skelly playing tells you something. Havertz playing tells you something. If it's on the bench, it tells you something. Um, who gets replaced, tells you something. Martinelli gets 90 minutes, tells you something. Obviously, title is won. Tuesday confirmed it, and what an amazing feeling for all Arsenal fans. The scenes at the stadium on Tuesday night will go down in history, go down in memory as one of the most spontaneous fan reaction that has ever been. Now, I'm going to walk you through what Sunday is going to look like. And I know, yes, we're still in celebratory mode, and I have to admit, it is a bit challenging, to build up to a game where you know that it really doesn't mean anything. So we're going to try our best, to look at this game and see, is there anything that we can learn from Arsenal at Selhurst Park? And the one thing, though, I do want to talk about, and there is a moment that is going to be absolutely fantastic. It will be incredible. And it's a moment that everyone is going to be looking out for, and including the Crystal Palace faithful. It is Eberechi Eze. Going back to Crystal Palace, growing up there, this is where his career started. He was formed there, left for Arsenal for 60 million in the summer, a club record fee for Palace. And then on Sunday, he goes back to the Premier League stadium as a champion. A medal waiting for him, at the ground that built him up. And Glasner has said very publicly that, how he felt watching Eze win the Premier League. The Palace fans, who loved him, will be in those stands as well. The Arsenal fans who now sing his name, will be in that away ground, and I'm calling it. I think Eze could score at the Selhurst Park on the day that Arsenal lift the Premier League trophy. I think that would be poetic, but more on that, later on. Okay, so let's look at 5 questions that I believe that Sunday, answers. Arteta has to name a starting 11 against PSG in 6 days after that. And several of those players, are genuinely uncertain right now. Not decided, not confirmed, not settled. I think Sunday changes a lot for some players. And for me, here are the 5 questions, that Sunday answers. I think question 1, Gyökeres or Havertz up front against PSG. Arteta is reportedly, planning to start Havertz in Budapest. It seems like this is what everyone is pushing. Gyökeres has scored 21 goals in all competitions this season. He needs minutes. He needs a goal at Palace, and for me, I'll be watching. Whether he's on the pitch for how many minutes, because I think that's gonna give you an indication who Mikel Arteta thinks should start this game. Um, I think everyone says that Havertz is a big game player. I think you have to balance between, where Havertz is in terms of match fitness, and where he is in terms of being able to give a lot of value on the pitch. Now, if Gyökeres comes on in Selhurst Park and then he scores and looks sharp, then Arteta will have a genuine selection, headache for Budapest. If it does not and Havertz starts, then I think it kind of tells you what is most likely to happen at Budapest. Okay, question 2, Lewis-Skelly or Zubimendi in the midfield for PSG. I think Zubimendi is no longer a guaranteed starter, at least for the rest of this season. after Lewis-Skelly's performance across the games that he started. And Arsenal has a very different dimension when Miles Lewis-Skelly starts. And I'm doing a video about Miles Lewis-Skelly, so I do want you to check that out, on the channel. I think Zubimendi will want to have 90 minutes against Palace. He hasn't really played, a lot of games, and maybe that to just remind Mikel Arteta of what he can do right now. His positional discipline and the ability to recycle under pressure. Um, you know, and of course, Miles Lewis-Skelly will want to have 90 minutes to reinforce the fact that he really, really deserves, to start. So it's going to be key, watching those players. If any of them play, who makes those key passes, who progresses Arsenal's play, who connects the defense to the attack more. I think that's going to be a question that perhaps Sunday is going to help us answer. Okay, question number 3, is Martinelli going to start against PSG? One goal in 29 Premier League appearances this season. For a player of Martinelli's ability, it is deeply concerning, going to the Champions League. But then again, Martinelli has been clutch in the Champions League this season. He scored a lot of goals, and he probably is the Arsenal, at least he's the top 2 scorers in the Premier League for Arsenal in the Champions League this season. So I think that's a question. Does Arteta start him at Palace and give him confidence, or does Trossard get the nod? Or could it be that you see Madueke play on the left-hand side? I think these are questions that we're looking to answer in this game. I think you watch Martinelli's body language from the first whistle on Sunday if he plays. Watch whether he's direct, whether he's positive, or whether the weight of the difficult season is still on him. And listen, I think that, for me, I love Martinelli. I would love to see him play in this game. I love to build some confidence, because I think we're going to need everyone in order to do what we think that we can do at Budapest. Okay, that goes to me. Question number 4: is Merino fit for the PSG squad? I think there's been a lot of conversations around Mikel Merino about his injuries, about where he is, his recovery, what the timeline is. So many questions, around Merino. He's been out since March with that foot injury. Now, if he gets minutes at Crystal Palace, or even 20 off the bench, that tells you that he might be in Mikel Arteta's mind, as an extra option in Budapest. I don't think he starts, but I think he might have a role to play depending on where Arsenal is needing to change the shape at Budapest. He is one player that is tactically very good, and what he can do in terms of going for the crosses and things like that. Question number 5. How does Arsenal defend against PSG? PSG's forward line, runs in behind Mosquera and Nkapie, who are starting at right back and center back. Would need to show how they can handle that specific threat. Now, I think the fact that on the right hand side we are, very, very limited right now, limited for options. Ben White obviously is done. There's the question about Julian Timber. Does he come back? Does he play in this Palace game? Does Mosquera, actually play on that right hand side as well? I think we'll be looking at Mosquera's performance if Timber is not ready to go. To see how he's performing, how he's handling it. Does he look like he's on form? I think that is a genuine question that Mikel Arteta will need to answer going into that Budapest game as well. Listen, Rice, Odegaard, and Saka, I don't believe start in the game against Crystal Palace. They've played more minutes than almost anyone in this squad. Now, is there a case for Odegaard, starting in this game? I think so. There is a case. There is an emotional, romantic element of Eze starting against Crystal Palace. But I think that, Odegaard could come on in the second half, as the captain, to be able to lift the trophy for the crowd. I don't think that you're going to want to risk, 90 minutes of football, for any of those players, Rice, Odegaard, and Saka. I think those are the players that you wrap in cotton wool. Gabriel and Saliba, I think there are questions too, about whether you start them, at all. Do you start Gabriel? Do you leave Saliba out? One of those two would potentially sit on the bench. And I think, Ricardo Calafiore getting more minutes, I think will absolutely be ideal. I think if I'm looking at, my team to start, I think Kepa starts in goal. This game doesn't mean anything. You don't want anything to happen to Raya. So Kepa starts in goal. The back four, likely Mosquera, Nkapie, maybe Gabriel and Calafiori. I think this is the audition for the defensive shape maybe Arteta wants in Budapest, but I don't think Nkapie starts ahead of Saliba. I think this game is to give Saliba a much deserved rest. Does Gyökeres lead the line? I think there's questions around that. I might see Havertz actually playing in this game. Then you've got Lewis-Skelly and Zubimendi. I think both of them start in the midfield. I think you give Rice a rest, for this game. And then, you might, consider Christian Norgard, maybe he comes on, maybe he starts this game, as well. I would play Zubimendi, and I will play Norgard in this game. I think you start those two, and maybe that gives you an indication that Lewis-Skelly is most likely to play in the Champions League, final, as well. Martinelli on the left, I think you play Martinelli, and then Madueke, on the right. And then you have to watch the substitutions. Who comes up first, tells you, who Arteta is kind of keeping an eye on for PSG. Who comes on late, who looks sharp, who's pushing their way into the squad. I think every sub is going to have a meaning on Sunday, as well. So, listen, can Arsenal beat PSG? We're going to do a full preview of the PSG versus Arsenal Champions League game. But I think, is worth just touching about that in this game, right? Because last season, obviously, PSG beat Arsenal in the semifinals to get to the final. And I think that everyone who watched that game thought, Arsenal gave good value, in those two semifinal legs. And if not for amazing, unbelievable feats by Donnarumma, I think Arsenal had a good chance of winning that game. So I think Arsenal will go into Budapest very confident. I think PSG know what Arsenal are capable of. But I think also PSG will realize that this Arsenal are very different from last season. If you look at the teams, that Arsenal have played and have beaten, Arsenal have beaten Atletico Madrid over 2 legs in the semi-final. They won the Premier League title, so obviously there's a lot of confidence in the camp right now. And I think this Arsenal team is going in a bit more with experience. The squad is deeper, and I think that we can be ruthless than that squad that faced PSG last year. Obviously, PSG are defending champions, so they have a squad that is to be envied, I would say. And everyone is giving them the favorite tags, and rightly so. They are the champions, defending their crown right now. And they've given some electric performances in the Champions League. Everyone talks about the Bayern game that was, felt like the Harlem Globetrotters, playing. But I think for me, Sunday just is questions more for Arsenal, questions more about the state of the squad, who starts, who's going to be ready for PSG as well, because that's really, all that we're playing for now. I think when I think about the scoreline, I think that this could be a 2-1, 2-1 sort of game as well. 2-1. 2-1 sort of game. I think maybe Arsenal score, Palace also score as well, and then there's a late winner for Arsenal. So before I go, I've got 2 questions that I want you guys to drop in the comments as well. The first one, Gyökeres or Havertz, who starts against PSG, and tell me the reason. Give me the reason who you think should start in that game. And 2, where were you on Tuesday night when it was confirmed? Because those stories belong, to an incredible memory line for every single Arsenal fan as well. Now, listen, a blackout trophy, at the training base, lighting up very, very soon, for Arsenal. Saka and Timber walking to it. This is just images I'm just thinking about. Wednesday morning, Eze, Saka, Rice at the Emirates as the sun comes up. Nobody asked them to be there, and they just went. And then you've got this last couple of months, Lewis-Skelly coming back to the fore. There's so many stories from this Arsenal season, and we're going to reflect on all of this. We're going to reflect on the season. We're going to break it down, what are the key moments, and the whole story of the season. But it's amazing to actually look at us and say we're Premier League, champions. And I think this season will go down in history. Whatever happens at Budapest, on Saturday, I think this season will go down in history. And listen, if we bring that trophy home on Saturday, oh my goodness, absolutely bedlam. I think will be unleashed on London in terms of Arsenal fans and the joy that will bring. But hey, if you're new here, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're returning, obviously I appreciate you as well. Check out our other videos on the channel as well. And let's just go celebrate Sunday. Come on, you Gunners.